There is a quiet hanging over Flagstaff that feels heavier than any argument Kody has ever ignited. It is not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that echoes unanswered questions. If you look beyond the emotional breakdowns, past the moving trucks and fractured marriages of recent seasons, something else becomes impossible to ignore. There is a gap. An absence that lingers in family gatherings, a missing presence in the confessionals, and a noticeable lack of logic in a household that now seems driven by chaos rather than connection. For years, viewers have debated who walked away from the family, but almost no one has stopped to ask about the one person who may have been able to hold it together. Logan Brown. For the longest time, the explanation has sounded simple and believable. Logan wanted privacy. Logan wanted a normal life. Logan wanted nothing more to do with the circus. And on the surface, that narrative made sense. But what if that story was incomplete? What if the silence surrounding Logan was not a retreat, but a calculated pause? What if his absence was not about escaping the spotlight, but about leveraging it? The idea may sound outrageous, yet industry whispers suggest we have been looking at this situation entirely the wrong way. For years, many assumed money was the issue. That Logan had no interest in cashing TLC checks or trading peace for fame. But insiders now suggest finances were never the real bargaining chip. Instead, the real conversation may have been about power, control, authority. According to growing speculation within reality television circles, the network is no longer in a position of comfort. Ratings may still be holding steady, but the emotional core of the show is deteriorating. The audience is fatigued. The storylines are repetitive. And the imbalance at the center of the family has become impossible to disguise. The truth is, the network needs something it no longer has. Balance. They need credibility. They need someone the audience trusts. And that desperation has reportedly led to discussions that would have been unthinkable just a few seasons ago. The rumor shaking the fanbase is this: Logan was not offered a standard return contract. He was allegedly offered something far more valuable: influence. A producer-level role that would allow him to shape how the story is told. If true, this changes everything. In television, cast members perform. Producers decide. They choose what makes the final cut, which moments are amplified, and which truths are buried under dramatic music and selective editing. A producer credit is not cosmetic. It is authority. It is protection. It is the difference between being portrayed and portraying yourself. If Logan were to return under such conditions, he would not be there to relive uncomfortable family moments or serve as emotional filler. He would be there to steer the narrative, ensuring that his reality, not a manufactured version, reaches the screen. This investigation is not about whether Logan misses his family or feels nostalgic about the past. It is about understanding a high-stakes negotiation that could redefine the future of the franchise. And to understand why this theory holds weight, we need to look at the current state of the network itself. Behind closed doors, there is growing anxiety. Divorce arcs have been stretched to their limit. The shock value has faded. Kody's on-screen presence has become increasingly polarizing, not because he is a villain, but because there is no longer a counterbalance. No grounded voice. No stabilizing force. For years, Logan filled that role naturally. He did not shout. He did not perform. He did not manufacture chaos for airtime. And in the past, that made him difficult for producers to manage. But times have changed. The media landscape today rewards authenticity over theatrics. Viewers are no longer drawn to forced conflict. They are seeking clarity, accountability, and truth. In a twist of irony, Logan's refusal to play along may now be his greatest asset. What was once considered a liability has become valuable currency. His calm, logical approach stands in stark contrast to the emotional volatility that dominates the show. This brings us to the business dimension of the theory, the part that makes everything suddenly make sense. Why would Logan and Michelle, a couple that has fiercely guarded their privacy, even entertain such a deal? The answer may lie not in nostalgia, but in ambition. Quiet murmurs suggest Michelle may be preparing to launch a significant professional venture. Whether it is a high-end property business, a consulting firm, or a lifestyle-focused enterprise remains unclear. The details are deliberately scarce. But one thing is certain. In today's market, anonymity is expensive. Modern business thrives on visibility. No matter how strong the concept, a brand without an audience struggles to gain traction. This is not speculation. It is proven strategy. Influence drives revenue. Relevance generates opportunity. Logan and Michelle are pragmatic. They understand numbers. They understand risk. And they understand that staying invisible comes at a cost measured not just in peace, but in lost potential. If Michelle intends to build something substantial, she will need more than expertise. She will need reach. She will need momentum. And there is no promotional engine more powerful within this demographic than reality television exposure. However, that exposure only works if it is carefully controlled. A single damaging edit could undermine professional credibility overnight. This is where Logan's involvement becomes essential. The audience respects Michelle, but they are emotionally invested in Logan. His presence alone has the power to reignite interest. Together, they could reposition themselves not as participants in family dysfunction, but as the successful, grounded representatives of the next generation. This potential rebranding arc is what makes the producer clause so critical. With editorial control, Logan and Michelle could shift the focus entirely. Instead of reliving old wounds, the cameras could document growth, leadership, and achievement. The show would no longer revolve solely around collapse. It could evolve into a narrative of transition, from dysfunction to stability, from inherited chaos to intentional success. Imagine a season that follows them navigating professional milestones, closing deals, managing teams, and building something tangible. The tone shifts. The franchise refreshes itself. The network benefits from a revitalized format, and Logan and Michelle receive unparalleled exposure without sacrificing integrity. But none of this works unless Logan holds the reins. Without control, the risk is too great. His professional reputation would be vulnerable to misrepresentation, and Michelle's ambitions could be reduced to a subplot. That is why the executive producer role is not a vanity title. It is a safeguard. A contractual assurance that their story will be told with accuracy, not distortion. When viewed through this lens, the silence in Flagstaff no longer feels accidental. It feels strategic. Every season Logan remains absent, the value of his return increases. Every episode without his presence strengthens his negotiating position. And at some point, the cost of staying silent may outweigh the cost of stepping back into the spotlight. What we are really discussing here is not pocket money or short-term fame. This is the kind of generational wealth that locks in security for decades. The sort of money that safeguards not only their own future, but the future of their children, and creates a reality where early retirement before 40 is not a dream, but a strategic outcome. According to growing industry whispers, the offer currently circulating reflects exactly that scale of ambition. The network understands one brutal truth: Logan cannot be bought with a standard appearance fee. He is not interested in a weekly check or fleeting relevance. If they want him, they have to offer something far more valuable than cash. They have to offer ownership. For nearly 20 seasons, members of this family functioned as employees. They showed up, performed their roles, allowed their lives to be dissected, and walked away with little control over how their stories were told. Logan witnessed that machine from the inside. He saw how the grind consumed his parents, how it distorted his siblings, and how it rewarded chaos over character. Signing another employee-style contract would mean stepping back into a system he deliberately escaped. That is not who he is. However, a partnership deal changes everything. A structure where he receives back-end profit participation rather than a flat fee is not exploitation. It is leverage. It is a boardroom move, not a casting call. And if there is one thing Logan has always been, it is strategic. The timing of this rumored offer is no coincidence. Season 20 is more than a number. In television, landmarks matter. They represent psychological reset points for both networks and audiences. A 20th season symbolizes longevity, survival, and the opportunity to redefine identity. For the network, it offers a chance to rewrite the narrative after years dominated by emotional collapse and public fatigue. Viewers are exhausted by endless division, resentment, and stagnation. They are craving resolution, progress, and proof that something meaningful emerged from the chaos. Logan embodies that proof. He is living evidence that despite dysfunction, at least one outcome was stable, grounded, and successful. For Michelle, the timing is equally critical. Persistent whispers suggest she is preparing for a significant professional expansion. Whether this takes the form of a premium real estate venture, a consultancy brand, or a broader lifestyle enterprise remains intentionally opaque. What matters is the strategy behind it. In today's market, anonymity is expensive. Visibility is currency. Launching a high-level business without a recognizable public presence dramatically limits growth potential. Influence drives trust, and trust drives revenue. Waiting until a later season would be a missed opportunity. Momentum is fragile. Audience attention is finite. If they move now, they capture a powerful demographic. Women aged 25 to 54, the most lucrative and loyal audience in both television and business marketing. This convergence of factors creates a perfect storm. A network desperate for renewal. A couple positioned on the edge of a major financial expansion. And a fan base increasingly vocal in its demand for accountability and authenticity. What was missing was safety, a mechanism that would allow a return without sacrificing dignity, privacy, or professional credibility. That mechanism is the producer clause. It is both shield and sword. It protects personal boundaries, unlocks profit participation, and transforms the platform into a controlled vehicle for success rather than exposure. But what does such a contract actually involve? What powers would it grant? And how much money could it realistically generate? To understand that, we must dismantle the illusion of reality television contracts. In standard agreements, cast members are classified as work for hire. This designation effectively transfers ownership of their image, voice, and narrative to the network indefinitely. Editors, often strangers to the family, decide which moments define a person's public identity. Dialogue can be rearranged, reactions spliced, and timelines manipulated to manufacture conflict that never truly occurred. This process, known within the industry as Franken-editing, is responsible for countless reputations being distorted beyond recognition. Logan grew up watching this in real time. He saw conversations reframed, emotional reactions exaggerated, and private struggles turned into consumable drama. He understands that the camera is not neutral. It is a weapon, and whoever controls the edit controls the truth. This is precisely why the executive producer clause sits at the center of this theory. If such a clause exists, it represents a seismic shift in power. It would place Logan not in front of the narrative, but behind it. As an executive producer, he would gain consultation rights, if not final cut authority. Episodes would pass through his review before broadcast. Scenes that misrepresent intent, damage professional credibility, or manufacture unnecessary conflict could be removed entirely. This would fundamentally change the tone of the show. Logan would no longer be a subject, he would be an author. His wife would be protected from exploitative editing. Any future children would be shielded from intrusive exposure. Their public image would be deliberate, composed, and aligned with the brand they are building beyond television. The title itself would not be symbolic. It would be operational. The obvious question is why a network known for prioritizing drama would concede such control. The answer lies in declining returns. While the divorce era generated a temporary ratings surge, that momentum has plateaued. Repetitive conflict without progression erodes viewer loyalty. Scenes of stagnation and resentment cannot sustain long-term engagement. Executives understand that the franchise requires a pivot. Introducing a new generational narrative, one defined by growth, professionalism, and recalibration, offers exactly that. In this context, surrendering partial control becomes a calculated risk. The network is effectively trading authority for longevity. A Logan-influenced narrative brings credibility, balance, and renewal. It transforms the show from a post-mortem of failure into a case study of evolution. The gamble is simple. A controlled, authentic revival is better than continued decline. Financially, the implications are staggering. Back-end profit participation means Logan would earn not just from appearances, but from advertising revenue, syndication, digital platforms, and future licensing. Each successful season compounds value. This is not a salary. It is an asset. Combined with brand exposure for Michelle's venture, the earning potential stretches far beyond television. It becomes an ecosystem, one that monetizes credibility rather than conflict. Ultimately, this is not about nostalgia. It is about leverage. Logan does not need the show. The show needs Logan. That shift in dependency alters every negotiation. If these rumors hold weight, Season 20 will not simply mark another chapter. It will represent a restructuring of power within the franchise itself. And if that happens, the silence that once defined Logan's absence will finally break, not as an apology, but as a calculated return on his own terms. There comes a point where silence itself becomes evidence. In the case of the Brown family, that silence is no longer subtle. It hangs over the later seasons like a shadow, heavier than any argument or emotional breakdown ever captured on camera. As viewers, we have been trained to focus on who left, who divorced, and who walked away. But in doing so, we ignored the absence that mattered most. The missing presence was not another wife. It was the one voice capable of restoring balance. Logan Brown. For years, the accepted explanation has been neat and comforting. Logan wanted privacy. Logan wanted a normal life. Logan rejected the chaos. End of story. But what if that narrative was incomplete? What if his absence was not rejection, but leverage? What if silence itself was part of a negotiation? Recent industry whispers suggest that we may have misunderstood the situation entirely. Behind the scenes, the network is facing a problem it cannot edit away. Ratings may be holding steady, but the emotional core of the program is eroding. The familiar formula of conflict, resentment, and fractured relationships is losing its grip. Viewers are exhausted. What they want now is credibility, not chaos. They want a stabilizing force. And that desperation has allegedly pushed the network into territory it has never entered before, offering control instead of compliance. According to multiple sources close to reality television negotiations, the offer on the table is not a simple appearance fee. It is something far more radical. It is partnership. The rumor gaining traction is that Logan and Michelle have been presented with a proposal that includes executive producer authority. In television terms, this is seismic. Cast members perform. Producers decide what the world sees. If this clause exists, it would mean Logan is not being invited back as a participant, but as an architect. This distinction changes everything. Instead of sitting on a couch answering uncomfortable questions about his father, Logan would be shaping the narrative itself. He would have influence over edits, story arcs, and context. Scenes that distort reality could be removed. Manufactured drama could be rejected. For the first time, the truth would not be filtered through chaos. It would be intentional. From a business perspective, this shift makes sense. Logan has never lacked intelligence or foresight. He watched his family sign standard talent contracts and pay the price. He saw how editing turned private moments into public weapons. He learned early that the camera is not neutral. It is a tool of power. That is why he walked away. Not because he feared visibility, but because he refused to surrender control. The financial side of this alleged deal is equally significant. A traditional talent fee is finite. You are paid per episode, and once the season airs, the money stops. Reruns, international licensing, and streaming profits benefit everyone except the person whose life is being monetized. Producer points operate differently. They offer a percentage of the profit. Residual income. Equity. If Logan is being offered back-end participation, every stream, every syndication deal, every overseas broadcast generates revenue. This transforms a temporary role into generational wealth. Not quick money, but enduring security. The kind of financial structure that allows early retirement, trust funds, and long-term independence. This explains the prolonged silence. High-stakes negotiations are not noisy. They are meticulous. No one remains this quiet unless they are reviewing clauses measured in millions. Logan does not need a paycheck. He already has a career. But legacy wealth is a different conversation. That is not opportunism. That is strategy. Still, money alone cannot explain the dilemma. To understand the hesitation, we have to humanize the decision. Logan stands at a crossroads with two very different futures ahead of him. The first path is the one he knows well. Privacy. Stability. A life untouched by public scrutiny. On this road, he wakes up without commentary dissecting his facial expressions. His marriage is not debated online. His choices are not weaponized. There is immense psychological value in this peace. He escaped the dysfunction that consumed his childhood. He built a life defined by normality. But this path comes with a cost. Silence allows others to control the story. It permits history to be rewritten by people who were not carrying the weight he carried. It turns him into a bystander in his own narrative. By protecting his peace, he forfeits his voice. The second path is far more volatile. It is the role of truth-teller. The producer. The author. For decades, Logan was the parentified child, forced into responsibility while adults faltered. He organized, stabilized, and absorbed pressure that was never meant for him. Yet his role was rarely acknowledged on screen. Not because it did not exist, but because it did not fit the desired storyline. Executive producer status offers something money cannot buy: correction. The opportunity to contextualize events honestly. To show what really happened during pivotal moments. To replace speculation with clarity. This is not about revenge. It is about record keeping. About ensuring that history reflects reality, not distortion. The psychological appeal of this power is undeniable. Being misunderstood for years leaves a residue. The desire to be accurately seen is deeply human. For Logan, this may not feel like selling out, but stepping up. Protecting not just himself, but the legacy of the siblings who grew up under the same roof. The calculation today is different from a decade ago. He is older. More confident. Supported by a partner who understands the business landscape. Privacy once felt priceless. Now it may feel expensive. Silence has allowed chaos to dominate the narrative. At some point, restraint becomes complicity.